Annunaki deliberations by me. I love going to the British Museum and looking at all these, and this is all just reopened. It's been shut for a while, but finally I got to go in here and have a look at, well, of course they call it the Assyrian section, but I'm sure it's Annunaki. And this is one of the scenes of them at what I think is the Tree of Life, the way they're portraying the Tree of Life and bringing it forth, saying that they are the seeders of this universe and the seeders of us humans. I love their wings, I love their beards, and I find it very interesting that some of them have, on their hats, they have the horns, 3 horns. And as you can see, they carry the pine cone, which many people say represents the pineal gland, and you can see it being depicted in some scenes. I didn't take pictures this time of them putting this pine cone towards what looks like a human being. And of course they've got their handbags in their pictures, which is maybe where they keep their pine cones. I find it quite interesting that they're all pointing either towards the tree or towards each other's heads. There's something about working with the head. In this one you can also see that they've got the little flying man in the eagle type being. Just a close-up of the tree as well. I know someone else was saying, oh, it's poppy seeds. But I've studied many different theologies over the years, and all cultures seem to have some kind of tree of life represented in them, and I think that's what this is showing. And I know we're all going to have our different views of what this is all about. And I always think that the little man sitting in the circle in the eagle wings on eagle tail, I think that's them depicting that they come from space, flying saucers, or space machines, and that they've flown down. In the old stories they're talking about how they've come from Nibiru, the planet Nibiru, and came to this world, created humanity when they needed some slaves, and us humans revolted against them. After a while we all got bored and rebellious, as humans do. We don't like to be slaves. And I find it interesting that one of these, like I love that, like I was saying about their wings, they have their wings on their backs. Is that to depict that they come from the skies, or did they actually have wings? But one of these guys looks like he's got his arm in a sleeve, as if he's broken it and he's had to have it all bandaged up. Though some will say, oh no, it's just the way his robe's wrapped around him, but the others don't have it like that. And then of course there's the wristwatches, which I think are like sundials. And I've heard other people discuss how in the stories they talk about pressing buttons on these disc watches and things happen, where I think they, maybe they had watches that could tell the time, but not just time on the planet they're on, but space-time. They've got technology here that's advanced in a way that we just don't quite understand. And also with their giant necklace, or maybe chess pieces, you can see again there's these flower symbols. There's something about the flowers which is very important, and on these watches I like to think of them perhaps as sunflowers being my favourites, but other people have said no, it's the like daisy picture of a flower that's got very tight but next to each other little petals round them. But I'd be interested in all your different ideas. I love their clothing, I love their hats, and I think it all is symbolic of something that we just still don't understand. What is all this sculpture trying to tell us? Is it telling us about the beginning of humanity? Who are these Anunnaki? There's all these different stories about Enki, Enlil and such like. And I wish I'd learned cuneiform. It's something that's been... They're saying they need people to translate the cuneiform, and now they're using the AI to do it, which is, one of the good things of AI. It can help us in other ways. So there's all these like documents and stones that are being translated that will hopefully tell us more and more. You can see they're wearing their little sandals here. But I think most of this because it was found in what we now know as desert regions. Obviously it was the equator part of the world, so it's going to be hot anyway. But I thought you might find these interesting, because I know not everybody can get to a museum and look at these. You know, they're giant slabs. I forgot to write down what it is that this stone is. I think it might be sandstone. So it's like, have they got wands? Is that wands they're carrying? Are they weapons? We need to know more. They're always very muscular as well, aren't they? Very well, they go to the gym, I would say. But I think their clothing's fantastic as well. It's like he's got frills and feathers around his cloak. Annunaki, those who came down from heaven to earth. Though in some translations it's those who from heaven to earth came. And I thought I'd do some photographs of them, and this is from the British Museum, because I know many of you aren't in the UK or can't get to the British Museum, or perhaps you don't have access to a museum that shows these kind of stone slabs from our past. Of course there's many different ideas as to what this actually means. Some say it's Sumerian, some say it's Assyrian. We've got them in there. I'm sure many of you know about the tablets that talk about the Anunnaki coming from their home planet in Nibiru, and they came here because there was a problem. And there's different ideas as to what the problem is. Some say it was their atmosphere was waning, some say their vegetation. But anyway, they came here for some reason, and apparently they wanted our gold. Now in some texts it talks about Mars being the first planet that the Anunnaki came to, and that I think it was 300 were left there and another 300 came down to Earth. And then comes the whole story of they created us because they needed slaves to mine the gold, because they found it when they was doing it themselves. It was such hard work for the poor little gods. I hope the Anunnaki aren't listening and thinking I'm being disrespectful. And when the Anunnaki made us mere humans, they did it in a laboratory called Shimtai, and that means the house where the wind of life is breathed in, which could be where the idea comes that God breathed life into us. You know, in the Old Testament, that's how it's said in Genesis. God breathed the breath of life into Adam, and so Adam came alive. So a little Anunnaki theology, because they're said to be the children of earth and sky. And the sky god was called An, which is where they get the word Anunnaki, which I believe is, well, they say comes from the heaven to the earth. And Kai, Ki, is the earth goddess. Enlil is the god of air. So a little Anunnaki theology, because they're said to be the children of earth and sky. And the sky god was called An, which is where they get the word Anunnaki, which I believe is, well, they say comes from the heaven to the earth. And Kai, Ki, is the earth goddess. Enlil is the god of air. And I don't know if these pictures that I'm showing you are representatives of them particular deities, or whether it's just various people of the Anunnaki, you know, doing their thing. But Enki had a temple, which was an Abzu temple, house of the subterranean waters. So it sounds like he was under the waters. And they had ziggurat style temples. So we need to go and find them ziggurats that are under the seas. But the reason I reckon these ones are gods is because, like I was saying about the crowns, or the hats had horns on them, and this is known as horned crowns of divinity. And it's interesting how Gurdjieff uses horns in his All and Everything for the main characters in his book. When they were making the first men, they used clay and blood from their own, you know, these Anunnaki bloodlines. And it was Enki that had put forward this advice. And when they made the first man, he was called a Dapper. Now, women didn't come till later. They didn't make the women for some time, and it was only because the men were lonely. Like, the human men asked their gods to make them partners. They noticed that the Anunnaki were male and female and had loving relationships, and that's what they wanted. But it was also the Anunnaki who gave us speech. And it's written, Enki, the Lord of abundance, whose commands are trustworthy, the Lord of wisdom who understands the land, the leader of the gods, endowed with wisdom, the Lord of Eridu, changed the speech in their mouths, brought contention into it, into the speech of man that until then had been one. So it sounds like he not only gave them one language, he gave them many languages, which may be where the Tower of Babel idea comes from. But I recommend the Enuma Elish for finding out more about the Anunnaki. And if you can get to your local museums, go and see if they've got any.